A Tale of Two Shipwrecks. The Auckland Islands are a place of ghosts. They rise from the Southern Ocean like the broken spine of the earth itself, battered by relentless winds and wrapped in an eternal cloak of mist. Located nearly 500 kilometers south of New Zealand, they are among the most remote and inhospitable places on the planet. A subantarctic wilderness where the sun rarely pierces the gray skies, and the land offers little comfort to those who dare set foot on its shores. For centuries, these islands have been both a beacon and a death trap for sailors caught in the brutal storms of the Southern Ocean. To some, they offered a chance of survival when ships were wrecked on their jagged shores. But for most, they were a prison without walls, where hunger, isolation, and despair took their toll. In 1864, two ships met their end in these forsaken waters, only months apart. One would become a story of resilience, leadership, and survival against impossible odds. The other would become a story of weakness, disarray, and slow, agonizing death. One ship was the Grafton. The other was the Invercauld. The Wreck of the Grafton. The Grafton was not built for war, nor was it built for grand expeditions. It was a modest schooner, barely 56 feet long, meant for short but profitable voyages. Its captain, Thomas Musgrave, was an experienced seafarer, a man of discipline and determination. In late 1863, he set sail from Sydney, leading a 5-man crew to the subantarctic islands in search of minerals, tin, silver, and whatever else the unforgiving land might yield. From the beginning, the voyage was difficult. The Southern Ocean was a restless beast, its waves towering and its winds relentless. For weeks, the Grafton battled storms, pushing ever southward. By January 1864, they reached their destination, Carnley Harbour, a narrow inlet on the southern end of the Auckland Islands. The crew had barely begun their search for minerals when the weather took a sudden turn for the worse. The storm struck without mercy. The Grafton was torn from its moorings, thrown against the rocks, and shattered beyond repair. In a matter of minutes, the 5 men were no longer sailors, but castaways, their fate now tied to the cold, unwelcoming land. Most would have despaired, but Musgrave did not. Within hours of reaching shore, he took command of the situation. He ordered the crew to salvage everything they could from the wreck: wood, nails, canvas, tools. Everything was dragged to the shore before the sea swallowed the rest. The first nights were brutal. The only shelter they had was a crude lean-to, hastily built from branches and whatever materials they had salvaged. Rain seeped through the gaps, and the wind howled like a living thing. Sleep was impossible. Among the crew was François Raynal, a Frenchman of remarkable ingenuity. While Musgrave provided leadership, Raynal provided invention. Using broken tools and scrap metal from the wreck, he fashioned knives, hooks, and even a primitive forge. Under his guidance, they turned seal hides into waterproof coverings and hunted the island's abundant seals and birds for food. They rendered seal fat into oil, which they used for cooking and light. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The men adapted to the island, though it was a harsh existence. Their makeshift hut, reinforced with driftwood and animal skins, became their home. They built a chimney to keep smoke out, and Raynal even devised a primitive bellows system to improve their fire. But survival was not just about food and shelter. Boredom and despair were just as dangerous as starvation. Musgrave knew this, and he imposed strict routines, work schedules, meal times, even personal hygiene. They made soap from ash and animal fat, cleaned their clothes, and even kept journals. These small acts of normalcy kept them from losing themselves to the isolation. Yet despite their efforts, the months wore on them. The Auckland Islands were not meant for human habitation. The damp air rotted their clothes, their boots fell apart, and injuries festered in the absence of medicine. Reynald suffered a terrible infection in his leg, nearly costing him his life. But he survived, thanks to the care of his crewmates. By the second year, they knew no rescue was coming. They had two choices: wait for death or escape. And so they did the impossible. Using salvaged wood from the Grafton, they built a new boat, tiny, barely seaworthy, but their only hope. On May 19, 1865, Musgrave and another crewman launched into the frigid sea. They navigated the 320-kilometer journey to Stewart Island, where they found help. Weeks later, all 5 men were rescued. Their survival was not luck. It was the result of leadership, ingenuity, and the refusal to surrender to despair. But on the other side of the Auckland Islands, another ship had wrecked, and its crew was not so fortunate. The wreck of the Invercauld. On May 11, 1864, 4 months after the Grafton had run aground, the Invercauld, a British bark, was caught in a violent storm while rounding the islands. Unlike the smaller Grafton, the Invercauld was a larger ship, with a crew of 25 men. The storm drove the ship onto the northern cliffs, an area far less hospitable than the sheltered southern bays. The Invercauld was shattered instantly, broken against the black rocks like a toy dropped from a great height. Of the 25 men aboard, only 19 made it to shore alive. But their suffering was just beginning. Unlike the Grafton's men, the crew of the Invercauld had no leader like Musgrave. Captain George Dalgarno was ineffective, overwhelmed by the disaster. He failed to organize the men, failed to salvage supplies, failed to keep order. Worse, the northern coast had little food. There were no large seal colonies, no protected inlets for fishing. There was only wind, cold, and starvation. The crew fractured. Some wandered inland, hoping to find something, anything, that could sustain them. None returned. Others simply lay down and waited for death. One man, Robert Holding, an apprentice seaman barely out of boyhood, fought to survive. He scavenged limpets, seaweed, and anything edible. But he was alone in his struggle. Over the months, the men died, one by one. Their bodies were left where they fell. There was no strength left to bury them. By the time rescue arrived, nearly a year later, only 3 men remained alive: Holding, Dalgarno, and one other. 2 shipwrecks, 2 fates. The same islands, the same merciless elements. 2 crews, 2 outcomes. The Grafton's men survived because they had fought together. The Invercauld's men perished because they had fought alone. The Auckland Islands are still there, unchanged by time. The wind still howls. The cliffs still stand. But if you listen closely, you might hear the whispers of those lost souls, the laughter of Musgrave's men as they built their salvation, and the hollow, broken cries of the Invercauld's crew as they faded into the